the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
On May 2, 2011, the world was stunned as the United States Navy SEALs executed a daring raid that resulted in the death of one of the most notorious figures in modern history, Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks. But after his death, something strange and unprecedented happened. Within 12 hours, Osama bin Laden's body was quietly disposed of, buried not on land, but at sea, in the depths of the Arabian Sea. Why was this done? What were the reasons behind this decision to keep his body out of sight, far from the public eye? In this video, we'll delve into the mystery of why Osama bin Laden's burial was carried out in such a controversial and secretive manner. Osama bin Laden was born into wealth and privilege, the 17th child in a family of 54, with his father being a billionaire construction magnate in Saudi Arabia. Despite his prominent lineage, when the time came for him to be buried, Saudi Arabia refused to take in his body. The reason? The Saudi royal family was deeply connected to the US and had long distanced itself from Osama's extremist views. His radical ideology had strained his relationship with his home country, and the idea of allowing his burial there was not an option. Not only was Osama's extremist persona a source of shame for the Saudi authorities, but his family's immense wealth, being tied to the royal family and the kingdom's finances, made the situation even more complex. His family had once been so influential that they even paid the salaries of government officials. Yet, despite all the wealth and power, Osama was now a pariah, and the Saudi authorities did not want his grave to become a shrine for extremists. The second reason for the sea burial was more strategic. The US wanted to avoid turning Osama bin Laden's resting place into a site for worship or reverence. As history has shown, the death of notorious figures often transforms their graves into pilgrimage sites for their followers. After the execution of Saddam Hussein in 2006, his burial site became a place of violent demonstrations, with extremists using his memory to fuel further hatred and violence. The US, having learned from this mistake, was determined not to allow bin Laden's body to become a symbol for terrorism. So, rather than allowing his body to be buried on land, where it could attract extremists, the US Navy SEALs took the drastic step of disposing of the body in the sea. They ensured that Osama's final resting place was as far from human hands as possible, hoping to prevent his followers from turning it into a shrine. The third reason for the sea burial lies within Islamic traditions. In Islam, cremation is strictly forbidden. The body must be treated with respect and buried in accordance with ritual practices, washed, wrapped in a white cloth, and buried facing Mecca. However, when a Muslim dies far from land, such as during travel by sea, it is permissible to perform a sea burial, provided the necessary steps are followed. The US military, despite the circumstances, made sure to follow these rituals to some extent. Osama bin Laden's body was bathed, wrapped in a white cloth, and prayers were said over him, all in accordance with Islamic customs. However, due to the lack of time and the urgency of the situation, the final step of burial was carried out at sea. This decision, although controversial, was seen by the US as a way to respect Islamic law while preventing Osama's body from becoming a rallying point for terrorism. In the final moments, as Osama bin Laden's body was prepared for burial, it was tied with a weighted bag and lowered into the waters of the northern Arabian Sea. At exactly 3:30 p.m., after a brief but significant final moment, his body was lost to the deep, his fate sealed. The US military had ensured that his body would not resurface. This was done not only for security reasons, but also to prevent any further desecration of his body, which could inspire extremist groups to rally in his name. It was a calculated decision, one that reflected the US's resolve to end the legacy of terror associated with bin Laden, while simultaneously respecting the complexities of his religious background. To this day, the burial of Osama bin Laden remains a controversial topic. While some view the decision as a necessary measure to prevent the rise of extremism, others criticize it for disrespecting Islamic customs. Yet the legacy of bin Laden's final hours and the way the U.S. handled his body reveals much about the complex nature of dealing with such a figure in modern history. For the U.S., it was a way to send a clear message. Osama bin Laden's death would not be a cause for celebration, and his body would never serve as a symbol for those who followed his dangerous ideology. Instead, his final resting place would remain a secret, submerged beneath the waves, away from the eyes of the world. What do you think about the decision to bury Osama bin Laden at sea? Was it the right move, or should his body have been handled differently? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most intriguing events. This version presents the story with greater detail, clarity, and engagement while also ensuring proper grammar and readability.